Before we begin out here along with the animals at the Outdoor Discovery Center, we'd like to have Travis Williams have a chance to say a few words. He's the executive director of this wonderful facility. So Travis, you have the floor for us.
Thank you. Just wanted to welcome everybody, and I know this isn't a spot that a lot of people drive to naturally every day on the outside of town here, but we are really blessed to be able to operate here in Fillmore Township and working with the township doing a lot of programming. We see about 90,000 people a year through our organization. About 41,000 of those is in our programming that we offer to the community, and then we see about another 50,000 a year that just visit this place, which is open 7 days a week, dawn to dusk. So we have folks that are just come out here to walk or jog. We allow people to walk their dogs on our trails if they're on a leash. We have a lot of different wildlife viewing areas and a birds of prey facility. And this is the new building that we just opened up back in September, the very end of September, early October. Is our visitor center, so it's a place that we have to allow the public to just interact with us in a more customer service friendly way. So this room usually is there's stuff on carts, and we have this room set up as like a touchable room with the displays on either side. And we actually have seen a doubling in our visitation since we opened this building up. So it's been really a good asset for us to have. And we also operate a nature-based preschool off our facility that has 56 kids that go to school here every week. So that's another aspect of what we do. And we work with about 5 county area schools as well. So yeah, so if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but otherwise we just welcome you. There's bathrooms on either side of the registration desk area at the front if you need to use those. Any questions?
Travis is an outstanding Hope College graduate. How did you get involved in this in the first place? Because you've been here quite a while and have seen tremendous growth with this.
Yeah, I was hired actually in the year 2000 to start the whole thing. So it's actually a unique collaboration. The Ottawa Area Intermediate School District partnered with Wildlife Unlimited of Allegan and Ottawa Counties, which is a nonprofit 501c3, to create the education center. But Wildlife Unlimited in about 2005 decided that the project Outdoor Discovery Center that they were getting started was doing way better than they were doing as an organization, and so we just transferred the name, that 501c3, to the Outdoor Discovery Center, and Wildlife Unlimited closed down. So that's kind of the roots of how we got started. So a conservation group and Wildlife Unlimited partnering with the school system to create an outdoor education center. That's kind of our roots. And then in 2009, we actually did a formal merger with the MACC Greenway Partnership. We assumed them into our entity, and that's when we became Outdoor Discovery Center MACC Greenway, which doubled the size of our organization very quickly. We own about 500 acres of land. There's 150 acres here on this site, but we own several hundred acres along the MACC River and through our Project Clarity work that we're doing. So we're a lot bigger than just this footprint here. We kind of have 2 aspects of our business, conservation and outdoor education. And our conservation side of what we do is working to preserve and protect the river corridor for water quality, protecting green space. And we partner with many of you in the room to do that, creating the Greenway. And then the Outdoor Discovery Center part of our work, which is really the bigger part of what we do, really home base is out of this location here. So I've been here since it started.
Thank you, Travis. Any questions of Travis before he gets back to his wildlife?
Great. Thanks for being out here, and need anything you can ask the person.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Thanks for having us.
No problem. Thank you, Jen.
Okay, we'll call our meeting to order, the January 25th, 2016 MACC Policy Committee meeting here at the beautiful Outdoor Discovery Center on a gorgeous January sunny day. We'll begin with introductions. Start with Jim.
Joe Bauman, Ottawa County Commissioner.
Skip Keefer, Park Township.
Jerry Nienhuis, Allen Township.
Sal Ransom, Cody Boy.
Alan Ayer, Sealand Township.
Tom Bird, Ottawa Road Commission.
Lindsay DeBoer, City of Holland.
Steve Boltais, Executive Director of the MACC.
Bill Vanderbilt of the MACC.
Wayne Coates of the MACC.
Ken DeWeer from Fillmore Township.
John Clark, County Road Commission.
Don Walters, Allen Township.
Kevin Blanks, New Zealand.
And Jim Story, Allen County Board of Commissioners.
Doug Grado, the author. Kelly Gower with the MACC. Elisa McGuire with the MACC.
Chris Brown, the county worker in the MAC.
Aaron Spicer with the MACC.
And Carol Wilson.
Jordan Bush, Elmore resident. Red Lake, Dillon Township.
Okay, thank you. And now we are open to entertain a motion for the approval of our minutes of December 21st, 2015. Do I hear a motion to approve those? Moved by Terry, supported by Skip. Okay. Any questions regarding our minutes? If not, all those approve them, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried, and Alicia has a little something to add to this.
Yeah, thank you. This is not a correction to the minutes because I recorded a meeting that was scheduled in January, but I did want to let you all know we changed the meeting date for the freight planning task force. It will not be this Wednesday, so if you have that on your calendar, you can change that date. It will now be on Thursday, February 11th, 9:30 to 11 at our office. So I just wanted to make sure that you had that clear. If you looked at the meeting minutes, just know that that date has changed.
Okay, thank you, Elisa. Any public comments, since we have some visitors here? Would they like the floor? I don't see anyone. If not, we will move on then into the presentation of our FY15 audit report. Doug Bredeveld.
Thank you. Am I good? We're good. All right. I'll see if I can get through this with a lion staring me down here. That's a first. It was a really neat place. First of all, it's a good, clean audit. Chris does a great job out there with the financial records on a month-to-month basis, and Steve and everybody else who works there. But just a good, clean audit. Everything went really well. After being out there and going over numbers and testing, doing a lot of audit tests, we come to form an opinion on the financial statements, which is found on page 1 of the book. And that says, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the MACC. So that's a good, clean opinion, what you certainly hope for when you have an audit done. If you do have your books, I'll just take you to a couple pages in here. Page 10 is your balance sheet, which shows the general fund, which is the transportation fund, and the watershed project fund. Biggest changes on here, there's two little things. You'll notice receivables are due from other governments is down about $60,000 from the previous year. Previous year's numbers aren't on here, so you'll have to believe me. But it's down about $60,000 just due to better timing from both submitting the reimbursement request and from the state making the payment to you. And there is also, about midway down the page, under the watershed project fund, an amount of unearned revenue, which is $75,000. And that's due to one of the funding, the grant funders paying you ahead of time on the grant before the expenses were incurred. It's super rare these days, but usually it's always reimbursement. But that's what that $75,000 unearned revenue is. That's for expenses that'll be coming up. And then on page 12, the income statement. Again, the two different funds. Looking just down to the bottom line, you can see the general fund or the transportation fund had a net increase in fund balance of $91,000. Watershed a net decrease of $39,000. Both fund balances are still in good shape. There weren't any real huge changes there between the 2 years. And then pages 14 through 16, these are the MACC holding company, which was formed to hold the building for the MACC. And that's just the ownership of the building. It's how it's required to be displayed under government auditing standards. And then in the footnotes, we have to report to the state if there's any over expenditures of budget, which would be a violation, and there are none reported. There's no debt reported because you don't have any debt. And many of you might have heard of GASB 68 at your local units of government and causing a big problem with a lot of them, but there's not a defined benefit plan, so GASB 68 doesn't have any impact on the MACC. So nothing bad to report there. Thankfully, you can avoid those kinds of things. And then a few slides here. This just gives you a bit more of a historical perspective on a couple of things. Here you can see over the last 5 or 6 years, the red line's the invested in capital amount, and that goes down. That's primarily the MACC holding, the building, and as it depreciates, it'll go down. And the unrestricted, you can see for the last several years, has continued to increase from a little over 300,000 to almost 900,000. This is the expenses for, this consolidates both the transportation and the watershed portions, but you can see the expenses exceed the program revenues, which are the direct revenues. The non-program revenues would be dues that come in here, and this next one shows a little bit more of that. This one separates out the grants from the dues. You can see the watershed dues and transportation dues have remained exactly the same for the last 5 or 6 years, whatever is there. And then you can see the grants are a little bit more volatile and fluctuate up and down. And that just depends on where the funding is coming from. And here's this one breaks down the grants by the transportation grants and the watershed grants. You can see transportation's pretty steady. In 2011, there was a big, I think that was the traffic study, or traffic signal study grant, which was an unusual one. But other than that, they stay pretty steady. The local number there, the light blue, that's the dues. And the watershed grants kind of jump up and down. There's always different funding available for that, and depending what grants you get and write for. And then the other thing we did, we had a letter with a couple comments in it. And that's just a little 2-page thing. Most of this is just canned information. Here we would have to communicate to you if we had any reportable conditions or anything like that we found, or any significant adjustments. There were no big adjustments made during the year. We had one suggestion as a way to improve internal controls, and that was just over the journal entry process. So that is my report. Everything's looking very good. And I'll be happy to entertain any questions if there are any. I'll make Chris answer.
Any questions of Doug? I hear none.
All right, perfect.
Thank you very much for coming. And we also thank Chris Brown for his ongoing efforts on our behalf to bring forth a clean audit. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, I think we can move on into the transportation program then. I think, Steve, you have the floor.
All right, including your agenda packet is a request for an amendment to the 2016 program of our current TIP, which is fiscal years 14 through 17. If you had a chance to look at it, it came from the Macatawa Area Express, and they made some adjustments to bring in some additional funding for some bus replacements in the amount of $270,000 total, $216,000 of that being federal funds, coming from a federal funding source not related to the MACC, but a different one. And as it notes there, it's for 2 buses, total $270,000. So a motion to amend the FY16 program of the FY 2014 to 2017 TIP, as reflected here in the memo, would be appreciated.
So moved.
Moved by Tom, supported by Russ. Okay, any questions in regard to this before we vote on the motion? All those in favor of accepting this motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion unanimously carried. Steve, continuing on with the local road and non-motorized projects.
All right, and if someone could advance the slide there for me, please, and pull up that map. Thank you very much. So, as I've been reporting for several months, we've been working on the development of the new Transportation Improvement Program. It's going to cover the years, fiscal year 2017 to 2020. And I had mentioned last fall we embarked on this process that we would be sending out a call for projects. That happened back in November. And again, As has always been the custom, we received a tremendous number of very solid projects. If you had a chance to review the memo included in this agenda item, you noted there that we had roughly $4.4 million to allocate in federal funding, 3 years of Surface Transportation Program, or STP funding, 1 year in 2020 of Congestion Mitigation Air Quality funding, or CMACC funding. Those two sources combined was about $4.4 million that we needed to allocate. And if you had a chance to look at it, we received over $9 million, almost $10 million, $9.8 million in federal in requests for federal funding. So represented by 23 different projects there. So we had some choices we had to make. And that started earlier this month with the TIP Development Committee. That is actually the same body as the Technical Committee. They just sit in a different capacity when they begin this process. And what you have there in front of you, the table that's been provided for your review, only contains some of the information that the TIP Development Committee looks at. They look at a number of other factors and previous awards and other data beyond what is presented to you today. So we sit down and take a look at all 23 projects, and the entities that submitted those nominations get a chance to describe those projects to the group, and the group has an opportunity to ask questions regarding those. And the map up on the screen there, and was also included in your agenda packet, represents the first one here with the orange lines on it. And as the title indicates, these are the roadway projects that have been identified to receive local STP funding for the time period that we're talking about, 17 to 20. So I just want to briefly walk through each of those. We're going to start up in the left-hand corner with the red line. You'll notice one thing that should jump out you very quickly is that the program that's being recommended for your consideration today is very much preservation-oriented. The red line is the only reconstruction job that is being proposed for this next TIP. It's actually an advanced conversion on a project that's being constructed in Holland Township this summer on 136th Avenue from Riley to Quincy. A mile stretch is being reconstructed and actually widened from 2 to 3 lanes. They received almost $900,000 in funding in this fiscal year, FY16. This represents a little additional funding that they're receiving in fiscal year 17. Other than that, the rest of the program is all preservation jobs. So just kind of working our way south from that 136th Avenue job, you'll see Lakewood Boulevard, 120th to 112th. Scheduled to receive $350,000 in federal funding. This happens to be the corridor with the largest ADT of any of the projects that were submitted as part of the call for projects. So we certainly want to be involved in that. Some of you, and if you had a chance to look at the recommendation, you'll see in one of the data items in the right-hand column there is PACER, and hopefully that's an acronym that's familiar to you. That's our pavement rating system that we use. 1 is a very poor condition road, 10 is a brand new constructed road. You'll notice that the nominations that came in were all in the lower end of that 1 to 10 scale. So it highlighted again the significant challenge our implementing agencies have in terms of upgrading the roadway network. We had no scarcity of projects that were in poor condition for consideration. So you may be wondering, if you're familiar with that section of Lakewood, wow, how is that road going to hold together till 2020? And I'll tell you that the Ottawa County Road Commission is talking with Holland Township officials about, is there a way to accelerate that project and then be paid back in 2020. So that was one of the compromises. For those of you who are engaged in either the TIP Development Committee or the Technical Committee review of that, there are always some negotiations that go on in terms of timing and funding amounts and so forth. That was one thing that we had to deal with, and that the Road Commission requested the funding much sooner. But as things worked themselves out, it got programmed in 2020. So that is one of the comments certainly I wanted to make on that. Heading out to the west end of the MACC, that project, that 2.1 miles on Ottawa Beach Road, that's scheduled for 2017. You may know that. Yeah, Skip.
That's the section that was just done.
Right.
But we're getting ready to do a section from 160th to the State Park.
Right. So you'll notice in the text box there.
I forgot.
Yeah, that's another one. So here's another example where the federal funding couldn't come at the optimal time when construction was going to occur. So this is an advanced construct project, a little larger one, $750,000 going to that project, which has already been constructed, but will be paid in fiscal year 17. Heading down here into Allegan County, a proposal for a resurfacing of a couple miles of 64th Street to receive $220,000. I'm in the bottom left corner of the map at this point. That is scheduled to occur in fiscal year 2019, and certainly we're in conversation with the Allegan County Road Commission about the possibility of doing a couple other miles at the same time that project is done. Wouldn't be bid through MDOT, it'd be a local job, but done at the same time to help save on some mobilization costs, hopefully. So good to be involved in that significant regional north-south corridor heading down to our friends and neighbors in Saugatuck. Heading a little bit north into Laketown Township, there at 60th is the emergency access. This is actually a project in the current TIP and under fiscal year 2017. That is scheduled to receive $300,000 in federal funding. And Laketown officials are working with MDOT as a little bit of a special project, a little out of the box in that regard. So they have lined up the necessary approvals from MDOT and Federal Highway to do that project. I did a little due diligence to make sure the Road Commission, who will actually submit this project on behalf of Laketown Township, wasn't going to have any problems when it got to MDOT and they said, hey, what are you doing spending federal funds on what will be a local road, which is not permitted under federal transportation law. Federal aid funds have to be spent on the federal aid system. But MDOT sat down, we sat down with them, Laketown officials, went through that process, and we're assured there is a category that provides for safety improvements, and this is a permissible expense. So I have that in writing, so when that project ends up at MDOT next year, we shouldn't have any problems getting that through the bidding process. Then working our way back north through the city of Holland, a couple of jobs, one on 16th Street, and if you happen to take a look at 16th there, right about in the middle of the map, you're going to see some other segments to the right of it as well. The MACC has done this in the past where we pick a category, or we pick a corridor rather, and we'll make allocations for several improvements of segments along that. We did that in Riley Street a while back. This is happening in this next tip. It's going to be 16th and the Adams Street corridor. So this one that we're looking at right now is on 16th Street in the city of Holland from Waverly Road to the city limits or quarter line road, a 1.5 mile section there to receive $625,000 in federal funding in fiscal year 2020. Just to the right of that is another one of the highest volume roads being funded in the program, a Waverly Road, major north-south corridor connecting down to the industrial section of the city of Holland, as well as to everyone who comes up from Allegan County and points farther south along M40. So a couple miles of Waverly to be resurfaced. This was another one where we did have to split the funding, so the majority of the funding will come in fiscal year 19, but there's a little bit of advanced construct funding that will come through in 2020, totaling that $810,000. While we're talking about Adams, take a quick look at the two segments, one in Holland Township, one in Zeeland Township. That section in Holland Township from Quarterline Road to 96th Avenue, scheduled for 2018 at $550,000 in federal funding, a $750,000 job in total, and then a couple mile section, 3 mile section in Zeeland Township as well, starting at 88th Avenue, continuing on to 64th Avenue, a 3-mile section, to receive $750,000 in federal funding, a little over $1 million, almost $1.1 million total on that project, both resurfacing jobs as well. And I have to tell you, you start to feel a little old when you start to see projects that the MACC was involved in initially, and this is an example on Adams Street in Holland Township. That was a federal aid job back a couple decades, well, nearly a couple decades, when it was widened to 5 lanes, and now it's back for resurfacing. So I'm starting to see some what I call legacy projects coming back. So, but they're important corridors, and we need to stay attentive to them. Heading on into the city of Zeeland there, a small segment on West Washington Avenue, a little less than half a mile. It's going to be reconstructed there where Washington meets at the Y. It's scheduled to receive $860,000 in funding. It's a fairly large project for such a small segment. The city's got some plans in looking at the west end of their downtown and a gateway into their community as well. So that'll be a great project, and looking forward to participating on that. Unlike most of the other projects represented here, where we were able to fund 100% of the federal aid request, unfortunately, we could not do that in the city of Zeeland. It was the only submission from the city of Zeeland. It was kind of a whopper at $2.1 million, so we did what we could. Hopefully, we're making a meaningful contribution to that project as well at the 860 level. And then lastly, also in the city of Zeeland, a segment of Riley Street, which will happen in 17 through their industrial area there, scheduled to receive $186,000 in federal funding. That was a slight bump. We had an unprogrammed balance of about $26,000 in our 17 program, and so that was allocated to the Riley Street. So what we couldn't do on West Washington, we tried to give a little bit back more on the Riley Street side. Any comments, questions regarding the allocations being recommended to the local roadway network? If not, if we can advance the slide, we'll take a look at the projects to receive non-motorized funding. And we can sort of take these, I think, in chronological order, starting on the left-hand side, 160th Avenue in Park Township, a 2-mile stretch there from James to Quincy, scheduled to receive $400,000 in CMACC funding for the construction of a separated non-motorized facility in fiscal year 17. And then at the bottom of the map, the blue line in the city of Holland, segment of Lincoln Avenue from 32nd to US 31, about a half mile, is scheduled to receive bike lanes. This project is going to be done in conjunction with a resurfacing job, so they are going to move the curbs in order to widen the road a little bit to provide bike lanes, so we're participating on that non-motorized component of that project. That's to occur in FY 18. And then at the top of the map there, a 2-mile segment on Quincy Street through an area heavily populated by industry as well. In Quincy, the construction of a non-motorized pathway scheduled to receive $464,000 in 19. And then lastly, in the city of Holland, in Zeeland Township, a short segment on 84th Avenue connecting a non-motorized facility that already exists on Gordon Street north to the Inno Academy, which you can see when you head by on BL 196. A half-mile segment there. Scheduled to receive $89,000 in federal funding. So any comments regarding the non-motorized projects or any of the projects on either of the maps? If not, just to round out the other recommendations included in the tables that were included in the agenda packet, you will see that for each year in the call 18, 19, and 20, a small allocation of $17,000 was requested by MACC staff to support our data collection program. If you had a chance to look at the comments, you'll note there that this is something we did prior. We suspended it during the current fiscal year, hoping to just kind of harvest some bid savings on jobs and pick up, the 15 to 20,000. Well, that hasn't worked out real well. With the new bidding climate, there have been no bid savings on any of those jobs. So to help maintain the stability of the data collection program, we've asked that the federal funding for the data collection program, again, be included in the TIP, and those 3 years represent about 1% of the available SDP funding. And then certainly the projects related to CMACC, there are CMACC allocations again for the Clean Air Action Program and the continuation of that program in the 2020 year. Noted as well to receive $50,000 in federal funding. And then you'll notice in the recommendation under CMACC for fiscal year 2020, the lion's share of it goes to the Macatawa Area Express for the purchase of replacement vehicles in the amount of $325,000 in federal funding.
Okay.
Any other questions about the local projects? Non-motorized transit roadway? If not, then I would just draw your attention to the projects that I failed to hand out. Sorry about that. So coming around is a table with trunk line projects. And while that's coming around, I will find mine. Or maybe I'll find yours. I have one in my packet here somewhere. Of course, the TIP includes more than just the projects. Yeah, maybe I will have to grab yours a second. Thank you. There are certainly going to be improvements on the trunk line system as well in the new TIP, and just walk through those projects. So in fiscal year 17, a couple of intersection improvements being planned. One is on US 31 at Bingham, and that is the construction of indirect left turns. So they will remove the current crossover and construct a indirect left turns at that location. Likewise, on BL 196 at 112th Avenue in Holland Township, there's some preliminary engineering funding in 17, and you'll see that the project itself a couple years down the way here. So $50,000 in federal funding to do the PE work on a similar type of project where they're going to be making some improvements and indirect left turns being placed at BL 196 and 112th as well. In fiscal year 2018 in Zeeland Township, some pavement work is going to be done on one quadrant of the intersection of BL 196 at Homestead Drive. So a small amount there, $38,000, some pavement rehabilitation going on. And then back on US 31, this time at the intersection of Berry Street, the removal of the crossover that is there today and the construction of indirect left turns there as well. And then a project on Interstate 196 westbound, going from the CSX Railroad, which is just a tad east of the interchange with M40. The westbound lanes then are going to be resurfaced up to the county border. To the east, this is again preliminary engineering in 2018, total amount of $317,000, $285,000 of that being federal funding, so a PE work going on there. And then when we get into 19, you see the construction of the indirect lefts at BL 196 at 112th, the resurfacing of the westbound 196 from CSX up to the county line, and you see the totals associated with those projects. And then a project that has been in MDOT's 5-year plan for some time. It's bounced around a little bit. It was in 15, went to 19, went out to 2021. Now it's back to 19, and that's the reconstruction of westbound 196 from 130th down Saugatuck Way up to US 131. So that project is scheduled to be at about $16.7 million, a little over $15 million of that is federal funding, the reconstruction of that roadway. And then also a component of that project will be the replacement of the culvert over the Kuiper's Drain, which will be done simultaneously with that job. A little over $1 million there. And then lastly, out in the year 2020, some work to rehabilitate the bridges on BL 196 at the MACC Bridge, scheduled to be about $1 million job, $996,000, $815,000 of that is federal funding. So I think it's important to just draw your attention and highlight a couple of projects that have shown up on the radar that were not in MDOT's program before. Some of that is because their program didn't initially go out to 2020. Some of that, I believe, is due to the additional revenue that the state is going to start to see, and this is a component of our share of that. So, for instance, the resurfacing of westbound I-196, I mean, that's a new project. I think that's coming into play as a result of that additional funding. And then certainly the bridge work as well, I think can be attributed to some of that as well. I mean, we've been talking about the reconstruction of westbound or southbound 196 for quite a while. That job has been on the radar, but we do have a couple of new jobs, and hopefully that's a result of some of that additional revenue that the state's going to start seeing beginning January of next year. So, Steve, how'd I do?
Good. I think you covered it. There's a couple of things I'd like to say, excuse me, about this though. You're right. We're projecting more revenue to come in, but also it's phased revenue. Part of it's supposed to come from the general fund, and that has not been defined yet how much it's going to be and where it's coming from. So there's more revenue projected. We're using that, but potentially there could be more projects. This is a planning document, but we just don't know for sure how much more there's going to be. So I think these are conservative, revenue projections based on a new funding program. As time moves along, we'll get a better handle on that and see exactly what we're going to do. But that's the hope with the new project, and we start phasing in these fees, the increased gas tax, the increased general fund, that we'll continue to add projects or look at different parts of the system that need to be fixed. But again, I always like to stress this: even without the new revenue, the tip is always a planning guide. It's things change. We need flexibility, just like other agencies do, in terms of what projects we're going to do. But this gives a snapshot at this point in time what we're looking at in the future. So we hope to do a lot. Obviously, there's some projects. The one that sticks out is the large one there on 196 that has needed some work for some time. So we're hoping that stays in 19. We don't have to keep moving it around like a chess piece, and we'll get through it. So, but that's why I'm saying, Steve, I think you did a good job of covering what we're planning. So, and I think it's been good for this area because we're doing the stuff on US 31 this year. There's been a large part of investment on the trunk line in the MACC area. So,
Thank you, Steve. Both Steves. Any questions? Tom?
Steve, westbound 196 from Hudsonville to Zeeland, the outside lane is really in pretty bad shape there. Is there any hope on the horizon for doing some resurfacing there?
Could be covered under our. It's escaping me right now. It's more of our maintenance fund that we do some of the lighter maintenance, and that includes some lighter resurfacing. So that could be covered by that, but I guess the best thing for me to do is look at that closer and see what we do have planned, if anything. But capital preventative maintenance is how we do a lot of those things. And so why don't I look into that a little further and see where we're at with that. That program is still going to be important because it adds life to some of our corridors. So.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Back to Steve.
Yeah, before we ask for a motion on this, I should point out the projects that were not selected for funding on the local side, they were listed there. As I mentioned, we received 23 projects, $9.8 million in requests. some couldn't be recommended. Those that were not selected for funding are listed on that last page. So just wanted to make you aware of that. Good projects, just didn't, couldn't stretch it any farther than we did.
Okay. Any other questions of either of the Steves? If not, we would entertain a motion to authorize staff to release the list of proposed state and local projects as presented to the public for review and comment. So moved by Al and supported by Tom. Any further questions from either of them? If not, all those in favor of this motion say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carried. We move on to Elisa and the US 31 Reconstruction Project Communication Strategy.
Or you want to start with the Road Safety Expo?
Sure.
You're going to cover both of them.
Yep,
so.
that would be great. Thank you. All right. In your packet, you received an invitation for the Road Safety Expo, and that's Saturday, February 6th from 10 until 2 in the afternoon. And I did want to just give you a little background about this event and also let you know that in your inboxes as you return to the office, we have sent you some more information. We asked for help to promote this event. So if there's a newsletter opportunity or website, if it could be shared on a website or Facebook, anything at all, we greatly appreciate it. As you all know, we approved our non-motorized plan in October of 2014, and that process really opened our eyes to the need for education. So it's something that continues to be critical to our area. And we really wanted to figure out some way to reach the community in the form of an expo. What we've been traditionally doing is going out for different community events and sharing safety information. But this event is being organized by many partners. And we are inviting motorists, we're inviting pedestrians, we're inviting bicyclists to have all of those perspectives in the room. And you'll notice from the invitation that was sent to you that Allegan County and Ottawa County Sheriff's offices are both helping us with this event, as well as our MPO neighbors to the north in Muskegon. And we have our executive committee as well as our tech committee members helping us, as well as bicycle advocacy groups. Why is this important now? It's important because we've been looking at our collision data. We're aware that a lot is happening in our region. Either motorists are not paying attention as they make a turn, or we're also seeing that pedestrians and cyclists are riding many times in the evening, dark clothing, they're not visible. And we're calling them the invisible cyclist or pedestrian. So this event is for everyone, but I do want to point out that we're really trying hard to reach this invisible cyclist or pedestrian. So that's why we need your help. We want to see those numbers decrease. We want to improve safety in our region. And as you all know, there are many cases where there's conflict. So we're starting this event reviewing the rules of the road. We also want everyone to have an opportunity to give input, and I see this as something that will continue in other forms after this event. But I think it's really important to have all of these partners together, giving input and speaking so that we can raise awareness. I did want to let you know that there are brochures that have also been provided. And if you don't have one at your place, you've got one in your email as well. The event is being organized over the lunch hour as well. So from 12 to 12:30, it's a working lunch is what we're calling it. Everyone has the opportunity to walk around the room. There will be displays set up from various groups. And that's really an opportunity for people to get more information. And then lastly, I wanted to just let you know that the brochure also has a program outline. And we will have detailed breakout sessions in the afternoon. So there's a lot there. It's going to be a jam-packed session, but we want to make sure that people come. A lot of effort's gone into planning it. We want to make sure that we can reach reach the community. So that is all that I have for you at this time, but thank you for your help in promoting this event.
Yes. I think this is probably got more relevance than what we realized. When we started looking at this as a planning committee, we started talking about the unseen or invisible cyclist. And from our perspective, that has a major impact on what we do. Number one, from organizations such as a Mission Downtown, where those individuals may not be as privileged as what we are, but they need transportation needs, and so they're doing it through the cycling piece, but they don't really understand the rules of the road, they don't understand the clothing piece and so forth. But then also from the criminal justice side, there's a large percentage of probationers and parolees that are out there that don't have driver's licenses, and their only means of transportation is that bicycle. And one of the major components for those individuals as far as completing their programming is to have employment. And so even with the great transportation system that we have in this area, many of them still use bicycles to get to and from work. And so when we talk about that invisible motor or bicyclists, those are some of the type of individuals that we're looking at, and that's why we're aggressively pursuing this and participating in it, because we see a real need there.
Like, one of the great things about a partnership like we have in planning this event is that we have the opportunity to reach out to driver's ed instructors. One of our speakers will be a driver's ed instructor, as well as, we've got a real variety of cyclists in our community. We've got some very advanced cyclists that are purely on the road, and we'll be talking about, where is it appropriate to ride and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. We'll also be looking at the shared use paths for those that prefer riding on that. So you can see it's a complex issue, but it's important to continue to talk about and hopefully clear the air and make sure that people are aware of what is safe, and that awareness is critical.
It seems to me that the Sentinel would want to really be a big part of this. They could use a little extra fillers to the paper.
Yeah, no,
So,
I agree.
More content.
Yep.
Yeah. Any questions of Lisa? Okay. Any additional things, Lisa?
That's all I have on the Road Safety Expo. Just if you do plan on attending, just email me and I'll put you down. So we know how many people to feed at the event. We're going to have food over the lunch hour as well.
Okay. With that, we will move on into the reconstruction and communication strategy.
Thank you. I'd simply like to walk you through some updates we've done to our website. As you all know, the MACC is helping the Michigan Department of Transportation with a communication strategy. And Steve and I sat down with a long list of ideas, and we met with MDOT and came up with a plan. And first of all, I just want to point out how you can get information and share this with others. On our website, you can see the upper right tab, and I actually blew it up so you could see it a little better, is the US 31 project, which we added to our homepage. And if you click that, it'll take you to the US 31 project, and this is our button. You just click that construction button with the construction cones, and that will take you to MDOT's website, which lists all the stages of the project. It'll let you know what's being done, how traffic will be affected, and any additional information, including the map that was provided in your packet. We worked with MDOT just to make sure that they understood that we want to have something simple to share with the community, and that's why we've got this button on our website. But it's so important for everyone to be aware of the stages. It's definitely going to be a project that impacts our commute patterns. So just wanted to give you an update and let you know that this has already been done. And yeah, we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. We want to make sure, starting now, that we get the word out to our stakeholders, residents, employers, And we're working on keeping that message clear. So.
This is a good partnership between us. Are you aware of any other places that this has happened before in terms of a big project where we have this kind of, excuse me, close partnership on it?
I don't. In fact, we went to the open house and learned that there's another community on the east side of the state that had a website created. And so we sat down with MDOT and basically shared our wish list, which includes, being able to have the project schedule and map. And they were really accommodating in terms of all of the elements that we wanted. So, and rather than creating a new website just for the project, we have it currently so that the websites are linked. Tried to keep that, as simple as possible. So.
Yeah, I think really the effort is for us to provide the local knowledge. So for instance, there's going to be a public open house February 24th out at the Riley Street Fire Station on this job. And they reached out to us and said, well, help us put together the invitation list, or the especially as it relates to key stakeholders and so forth. So we've been working with the City of Holland and Holland Township staff to ensure that we get that that list of invitees and notifications, get that taken care of. And they want us to take a look at that to make sure no one's missed. And so that's been very helpful in that regard, that we're providing some of that local knowledge. And they sent this to us in advance and said, hey, take a look at it. Do you see anything? And oh yeah, we don't call this street, it's not an avenue, it's a street. And we can provide some of that type of input. So it's been working wonderfully. And our goal is the same. We want to try to minimize the disruption that a major project like this is going to cause. And so we have the same goal, and they've been very helpful in that. I mean, this was put out by MDOT's graphics shop, and so it's been great. We've been working on it now for actually, well over a year. So now we're getting close to project implementation. So we're just trying to help make the largest roadway project this area has seen. And the bid came in very favorable earlier this month, but it's the largest roadway project we've seen in this area since the Ford Freeway was constructed. So it's a big deal. So we hope to make it as painless as we can. I mean, there's going to be a disruption. You're going to see some other material coming out with the staging. There's going to be crossovers and so forth, and there's going to be an intersection closure now here and there as part of the project. And we again hope to, through education and information, make it as painless as possible.
So
when does the fun begin?
Well, fortunately, the department was very conscientious when they did the resurfacing job on 31 from 32nd to 8th Street. As part of that project, you may have noticed that there were lane closures up in Holland Township from Lakewood to Quincy. And what they did is they widened the northbound shoulder in anticipation for two-way traffic on that side of the road this year. So that type of work was done. You may notice if you're heading southbound on US 31 between 8th Street and 16th Street, the median's paved. And right now there are temporary reflector posts in there. And that's the median crossover where traffic is going to be redirected from one side back to the other side. So by putting those in place already last year, the contractor, as soon as the weather breaks, the contractor gets to start. Now, one thing, the department was very, I think, sensitive to tulip time and the influx. So they are going to essentially, I shouldn't say suspend work, because the contractor is going to still be out there, but will not be involved in any activities that is going to really disrupt traffic flow on 31. So that's been built into the construction schedule as well. And they're going to maintain access to all the adjacent land uses. So certainly the tourist attractions impacted by this, but also all the retail. I mean, that's a major retail center of our entire area. So I mean, all that access will be maintained. But we'll talk about it a little bit more next month, just before, but I mean, there are going to be some left turn prohibitions through the construction zone. So if you're, I mean, it seems like with two teenage daughters, I'm at like Old Navy every week, it feels like. So I won't be able to, you know, head north and make that left turn off of Felch, right? That movement is going to be restricted. So I would have to go to the northern end of the construction zone, then make the left turn and come back, for instance. So that there's, again, some information and communication that's going to have to be provided as part of that. And people certainly will learn those patterns as well. But if we can get the information out early, we hope it'll minimize the disruption.
I'd like to add as well the stages, May to August. And this is after tulip time until August. The southbound traffic will be crossed over to northbound lanes. And then from August to November, it's the other way around. So yeah, we want to make sure people are aware that definitely the patterns are going to be significantly different.
And there's a graphic that's going to be coming out that looks very similar to this, that has the stages, that has the left turn prohibitions. It wasn't quite ready to go for today, but
yeah,
that's going to be coming shortly.
We'll be focusing on 9th Street then during tulip time?
On the crossover, is that going to be maintained as 4-lane then, or just 2-lane traffic when we're crossing over? 4-lane, okay.
2 north, 2 south.
Okay.
Yeah, this is an area that we've gotten much better at, just recognizing you know, the events and everything else. I'm not going to say we always have learned the easy way, but we've learned, and it's part of the communication before project that I think that we'll become much better at, and it certainly helps the community. It helps, you know, with getting the project done, and helps Michigan's drivers. So it's a good thing, but like it's taking some time.
You know, one additional thing is a listserv, which will be an email notification, and we're working on providing that list to MDOT, and so that's another way that people can stay informed, up to date, and receive emails whenever there's a stage change or any delay. So we're going to do the best we can to get mailing lists and email addresses to MDOT. So you will see some information, I'm sure, in your inbox this week, asking if you want to be on that email list.
Okay, thank you. I think we are ready to focus on the MACC watershed project. Kelly?
So the first thing I wanted to provide was just a quick update on the SAW grant. We are nearing the end of that project. The grant goes through the end of March. And the big focus of that grant was to help us defray staff costs to update documents that are required for these stormwater permits for both the City of Holland and Zeeland, Ottawa and Allegan County, and then the 2 county road commissions. So the 4 kind of major components that we've been working on, public education, illicit discharge and elimination, post-construction, stormwater control, pollution prevention, good housekeeping. All of those are surrounding plans or documents. Public education, illicit discharge, and the post-construction, those were all existing that needed to be updated. So MACC staff have spent time updating the public education and the illicit discharge plans. The counties working together, Ottawa and Allegan County, are updating the post-construction standards. You may be more familiar with them referred to as the county development standards. So you'll be hearing a lot more about those, or your planning commissions will if they follow the county's development standards or defer to the Drain or Water Resource Commissioner to provide those reviews. And then the pollution prevention and good housekeeping was kind of a component that everybody had been doing for their permits, but nothing was in writing in documents. So that's what we've spent most of our time doing. Over the next few months, as we get these documents finished, we'll be presenting them in more detail to help you understand what we've done to our public education plan. There's been some minor changes because of the permit requirements. The illicit discharge elimination program, nothing major different there, just wanting everyone to be familiar and aware with what we are doing with that program. The post-construction, again, the counties are working on updating their standards. They will have drafts ready by the end of March, but then there still has to go through a process of the county approving those standards, and then we will go through a series of meetings likely, either with boards of trustees, councils, planning commissioners, to roll out those new standards, help everyone to understand how they've changed, because there will be some significant changes to those. So the MACC will work with each county, and I think everybody's going to probably, Ottawa and Allegan will probably do it a little bit differently as far as how they work with your boards and planning commissions to provide information about the new standards and to encourage adoption of those standards. So more will be coming on that. So once the grant is finished and we get the permit applications in, which are due April 1st, there's still a lot more work to be done. So we will continue to work with the permittees to make sure all of these things are in place. And then the ultimate product for the grant is what they're calling a SAW stormwater management plan. So we will actually assemble a document that we will submit with the final grant package that has all of these components, plus they require some additional information, primarily things that we already have in our watershed management plan. So description of the watershed, of the land uses, soils, those kinds of things that we already have. We just have to assemble it into a new document and just make sure we have all those components to satisfy the grant requirements. So that will all be happening by the end of March to satisfy the grant. But like I said, we still have plenty of work to do to implement all of these things within the stormwater permitted communities. So you'll hear more about these individual components over the next few months. But any questions on this process right now? No? Okay. All right.
Move on to the project updates?
Yeah, I have some other updates, and it ended up being more than I thought there would be. I should have probably itemized them a little bit more, but just some basic information about some projects that are upcoming. So with the Regional Prosperity Initiative, where we are looking to develop or investigate sources of sustainable funding for watershed projects in the Southwest Michigan region, we did publish a request for proposals for that funding study on December 15. It is posted on our website, and I do have a copy of it here if anybody wants to take a look at it. But we are accepting proposals through next Friday, the 29th. We know that we have at least a couple consultants that are interested. And then we will go through an evaluation process with our partners from the Grand Valley Metro Council and the West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission, who are also going to bring some other watershed partners along from the Muskegon River and Grand River. We'll hold interviews if we need to, and then the next policy committee meeting in February, we will have a recommendation for a consultant to hire to complete the study. So then with your approval of that staff recommendation, next month the project would kick off on March 1st and then run through August 31st, with the goal of a consultant being able to provide us with several funding strategies within the West Michigan region. And there will likely be some opportunities throughout that process to get some input from stakeholders. We're not exactly sure what that's going to look like yet because we're waiting on the proposals from the consultants. But we'll keep you updated on that process, but we will have more information in the packet, your policy packet next month, with a recommendation to hire a consultant. So, questions about that one? All right, so I think it was a week ago from last Friday, we met with the Outdoor Discovery Center, some staff here, that were interested in applying or reapplying for the Volunteer Stream, River, and Creek Cleanup Grant. I think I got that right. So we had applied and received a grant in 2013 to support our annual river cleanups. So the Outdoor Discovery Center was interested in doing that again this year. So thanks to Carolyn, she was able to take our previous proposal and update it, modify it, and turn that around and get it submitted within a week for this new round of funding. So we have made some changes this year. The last time we only asked for $1,000, so we've almost doubled that request. We will be providing some match, the City of Holland, for the disposal of the trash, and then the Outdoor Discovery Center. And then we will hopefully get a lot of volunteers, and all of their time counts as matched to the grant as well. One thing that we want to do with this, with the grant in particular, is to try to focus on outreach to youth in the community and get more youth involvement. We have had Boy Scout groups participate in the past, and I've worked with a group from Grand Valley. But with Project Clarity and the momentum of Project Clarity in the schools, that's one target audience, is the groups that are already doing Project Clarity curriculum. We thought we would also reach out to area church youth groups to try to get their involvement, and then Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, those sorts of local organizations. So to try to really get more youth involvement. The grant funding will help us to purchase some supplies and equipment needed for the cleanup, and then also some volunteer appreciation gifts for that. So we should find out sometime in April whether or not we receive that funding. And I think, did I note it up here? It is 2016 is our 10th annual year of having river cleanup, so it's kind of fitting that for our 10th annual we try to make it a little bit bigger, and the grant will help us to do that. Okay, so just a few other quick things here. The Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant that we applied for a few months ago to fund agricultural practices. We were finally notified that we are a finalist for that grant. They had anticipated making those notifications in December, so their timeline has been pushed back a little bit. So it will be another 30 to 60 days before they select the finalists. But it's a huge step for us to be in that pool of finalists. So I think we can take that as a good sign that we have a high chance of being funded. And then also last year, maybe not quite a year ago, we worked with the City of Holland to submit a grant application actually through the Forest Service for Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding to support tree planting. So the city was awarded that grant, and they're still finalizing all the paperwork and the grant contracts. But that will support tree planting to, in particular, mitigate for the loss of ash trees due to emerald ash borer. So that grant will support tree planting of about 600 trees over the next 2 years. There is funding built in to provide cost share to residents of the City of Holland to plant trees on private property. So that was fortunate that they supported that. So the grant is $100,000, and it will support both the tree planting and some of the City of Holland staff time. The MACC provided some match to the grant in our staff time to assist with some of the outreach and education of homeowners, in particular in areas where we know have low canopy. So we have that canopy assessment that was done by the Annis Water Resources Institute a few years ago. So we know those neighborhoods where there's low canopy. So that's where we will help the city do some targeted outreach. The Holland Board of Public Works will also assist with that. They have some materials about tree planting, and in particular, they're interested in the utility conflicts and avoiding those. So that's exciting that we'll be able to move forward with that. So that grant will start on April 1st. We did just publish our winter newsletter early January. So I know Elisa had passed some of those out along with the Road Expo brochures. There's more on the table outside. There's some loose ones if you want to take those. And we did drop off copies at the Holland City Hall already and the Holland Charter Township office, just because we were out and about doing other things. A few upcoming events to let you know about. February 11 will be our next Watershed Advisory Committee meeting. We haven't met since the end of October, so it may be a little bit longer meeting, but we'll send out information about that probably after the first of the month. February 23, Project Clarity is planning to do a luncheon for farmers. They did this last winter as well to update farmers on the project and make them aware of the funding opportunities that are available. We don't have any brochures or flyers for that yet. The intention was to do a direct mailing to the farmers, so Lynn Katecki, who's on staff at the Outdoor Discovery Center, is handling that. But it will be from 11:30 to 1 o'clock at Greenmark Equipment in Fillmore Township here. So not too far away from where we are now. So as soon as we have a flyer or a brochure, we will certainly distribute those. And then kind of further out on the calendar, I just wanted to let you know about a few dates because we have selected these. The spring cleanup, river cleanup, will be April 3. Yeah, April 3. So again, that's our 10th annual. So this will be outside of that grant that we applied for that would support the fall river cleanup. And then the MACC Water Festival, we have confirmed that and booked Windmill Island for July 9. It'll be a little bit different than it was last year. If you were there last year, we'll be in a slightly different location. Most of the activities will be confined in that one location. We were kind of spread out last year. So we thought the one location would maybe help with the flow of guests. So we'll have, we have had one planning meeting for that. Lynn Katecki, again, from Outdoor Discovery Center, has kind of taken the lead on that event. And so she's off in Hawaii at the moment. And so when she's back, we will kind of start that up in force. And by early March, she figured we would have materials out for exhibitors to register officially, and we'll get things set up. So we hope to have a large event like we did last year and great weather like we had last year. So I just wanted to make sure you have those dates so you can put those on your calendar. And that's all I have.
Any questions of Kelly? No, thank you very much. And we will move on into administrative issues with Steve on the monthly financial report.
Yep, the financial report, including your agenda packet, represents the first quarter of our fiscal year through December. Revenues are standing at 52.1%, expenses at 20.2%. Be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding those. I should note that when we bring forth the first budget amendment, we will make a few modifications to that financial report. For instance, lines 1 and 2 under the revenue section, Federal Highway Section 112, Federal Highway Administration, and FTA Section 5303. Those have been combined into what is now called a consolidated planning grant. And so you are not going to see any revenues posted against 5303 because the two have been combined. So we need to make a couple, that's a new change this fiscal year, so we need to update our financial report. And I figured we'll wait until we do the first budget amendment and take care of that as well. But happy to answer any other questions you may have regarding the report.
Okay, if not, moving on into the MACC Executive Committee report.
Yep,
Steve?
that was included in your agenda packet. Be happy to answer any questions regarding that.
Okay, and then Part C, bylaws, agreement revisions.
Yeah, you may recall that last month I had given an update on the activities of the MACC nominating committee, and as they're going about the process of filling the vacancy that we have on the executive committee. And the direction that we're heading with that is to appoint a sitting policy committee member on the executive committee. So that raised questions about what impact, if anything, that would have on the bylaws. And I did check with our legal counsel, and indeed some tweaking, as I mentioned last month, will be necessary, but as attorneys are prone to do, he started asking me other questions. So, and they're very good questions. I mean, one, for instance, I don't know how many of you recall or remember that the MACC has two foundational documents, our bylaws and then an agreement that each of you has signed. So the bylaws references the agreement and vice versa. Well, there's also a composition of the policy committee section in the agreement. So that's going to have to be updated as well. He also pointed out, he reminded me, and I was already aware of this, that the modification of the bylaws is a fairly cumbersome process by design. So first of all, any revisions to the bylaws require a supermajority approval by this group. 2/3 of you have to agree to those. And then they have to be so-called ratified by 6 of the 9 cities or townships as well. So once we're in agreement around this table, then we have to take that out. Typically what we've done, we haven't touched them since '07, but we make presentations to all your councils or boards to get their approval of that as well. So, he had pointed out, if you're going to go through that process, if we're opening it up, make sure if there's anything else we want to take care of, we do it at that time. And so I spent a little time since our last meeting, actually, exploring the possibility of reorganizing the MACC under a different state enabling legislation, specifically the Metropolitan Councils Act. This was an act that was approved by the legislature when the Grand Valley Metropolitan Council was formed. So I really went back and took a look at that. Currently, we are organized under the Intermunicipality Study Committee Act, which is a very brief statute and was passed back in the 50s. So the Met Council Act was done much more recently. So I really took some time to look through that to see if there were any advantages to the MACC reorganizing under that enabling legislation. And after that review, I came to the conclusion, not really. There were really only 2 powers under that act that the Intermunicipality Study Act did not provide. One was it allows the MACC as its own entity to levy a millage. And any of you who are familiar with our bylaws know that the organizers of the MACC specifically put into the bylaws a prohibition on the ability of the MACC to levy a millage. I think that's wise. I don't think there's any need to change that. So, and then the other thing was the Met Council Act allows the MACC to issue revenue bonds. Well, I don't see us doing that, and we wouldn't have a revenue stream that could back bonds anyway. So, other than those 2 things, there was really, I saw no other advantages. So that's been set aside. If you did have a chance to look at the executive committee report, I have been thinking a little bit about the bylaws, the agreement contains a cap on the amount of dues that can be levied, and that is set at $1 per capita. And that was set back in '93, and through the go-go 90s, where the area was growing 3 to 5% a year, we had nice, and the dues are based on population. We had nice increases, built right in due to the area's growth. Well, we haven't maintained that growth. It's been, a different situation in terms of population growth from 2000 on. So that is starting, as well as inflation, is starting, to feel that impact. I mean, as Doug pointed out today, we're not in, bad shape financially. We have a healthy fund balance, but I am thinking, since we only open up the bylaws about once every 10 years, is that something we should consider? Is taking a look at either an adjustment to that $1 cap, or instituting some kind of factor that keeps pace with inflation or something of that nature. So there's a little discussion on that as well. I'm not saying that's going to come forward as a recommendation, but I think it should be considered since we're opening up the bylaws again. So that's where we're at. I can't promise we'll have something to you next month, but hopefully in the near future.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Any questions of Steve with regard to any of that? Harry?
Just a comment on that. We had a meeting with the nominating committee, and at that point, we were discussing the bylaws and the wording of such. I think at that time, jokingly, we said that, why can't we just change it? We don't really need an attorney to change the wording of the bylaw. Is that possible that we can change the bylaws, regardless of how we change it, without the services of an attorney?
Well, being one of the foundational documents I know I would feel more comfortable at least having our legal counsel, look through them. And he did raise, he reminded me about the clause in the agreement regarding composition, and I had not remembered that. So, that was a good thing. So how I like to do things with the attorney is make all the changes myself and then hand it to him and say, just review this. Don't have them draft the wording. We always do that with our contracts. We draft the contracts, and then we just hand it to them and say, do you have any concern? And in fact, most contracts I don't even send to legal counsel anymore. So, that's why our legal line item is only $2,000 at this point.
They have to eat too, I suppose.
So, but that's how we'll proceed. I mean, and in fact, the nominating committee is going to have to convene and talk about a couple of the questions because it's going to impact what direction we have with the language, for instance. So,
Since you've done all this interesting research, yes.
Yeah, just two comments that I'd like to make. First of all, the MACC has functioned very well for the last, 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
It's done real good, better than any of us expected, I think. Secondly, don't fix it if it isn't broke.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to Ken DeWeerd.
Those are words from our former supervisor.
who I believe, I mean, you were there in '93, right? Yeah, that's right.
We want to welcome you to the deer in the elk room just outside the window. From our township here, we want to thank Outdoor Discovery here for hosting us. It's a good opportunity for anybody that has never been here to have an ability to tour this facility. We are now one of the over 90,000 visitors here per year, as Travis has said. And we're pretty proud of this facility. It's part of Fillmore Township, and we're glad that you could all be. As far as Fillmore Township goes, we're right in the midst of making a budget for the next fiscal year. Fiscal year begins April 1. We talked a lot about roads today. Just might be interesting for everybody to know here in Fillmore Township, we spend a third of our budget on local roads. And that's not the primary roads, that's the local roads. And that's one of the reasons our road system here in the township is in above average to good condition. The other parts of our budget, we spend 20% of our budget on fire and first response, 15% on utilities, water and sewer, 5% on police administration. We have a full-time police officer, and 8% of our budget is spent on administration, which includes all elected officials, all our boards, our secretarial help, and our assessor. So we're pretty efficient over here at the township. We don't spend a lot of administration. As far as building activity goes, we had a very productive 2015. Like in all areas, our residential, we had quite a bit of residential, more than normal. And of course, our agriculture base, our farmers did a lot of expanding. We're still the bacon and eggs township of the county, where we produce a tremendous amount of those products. I just want to welcome you here. If you have any time, extra time after the meeting, it's getting a little later, but if you do have the time, make sure to tour this facility. And again, we thank Travis for inviting us over here.
Thank you. Any questions, Ken? If not, any other members have any items that we should be discussing? If not, our next meeting will be February 22nd. At the Holland City Hall. Nancy will be our host. We'll look forward to that.
Or someone.
12
You're
noon.
not available.
We are open for a motion to adjourn. So moved by Jim, supported by Todd. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Todd? No.